The empty mansion, Elena Agyeman's mansion, was the kind that people whispered about as they passed by in their tro-tros and battered taxis, nestled in the wealthiest part of Accra, behind ivory-colored walls taller than dreams, guarded by iron, gates imported from Italy, and security systems wired straight to London. The floors inside were made of polished marble from Spain. The ceilings held chandeliers so grand they looked like floating palaces. But on this warm Thursday afternoon, in the golden light of the African sun, Elena sat barefoot in the middle of her massive bedroom floor, untouched by all of it. The air conditioning hummed softly, cooling a room too big for one heart. Around, her shopping bags from Paris and Lagos lay untouched, still in their expensive wrapping. A navy blue velvet gown, custom-stitched by a Nigerian designer for a political gala, hung limply over the corner of her antique chair. She had canceled again. Canceling had become her habit. Her publicist hated it. "People are beginning to talk," they warned. But Elena no longer cared what people thought. Because after years of flying first class across continents, gracing magazine covers and sitting beside presidents, she still hadn't found the one thing she couldn't buy: real love. At 29, Elena was more than just rich. She was legendary. The youngest tech entrepreneur to take an African company global, the creator of Kuti Chain, a blockchain system that revolutionized agriculture trade for rural farmers. Her face had been plastered on the walls of banks, on billboards beside highways, but she often wondered, did anyone ever see the real her beneath the filtered perfection? She stood up slowly, walked to the floor-to-ceiling mirror, and studied her reflection. Her skin glowed, not from joy, but from luxury facials and imported oils. Her eyes, lined with eyeliner and coated in mascara, hid a sadness so deep it could flood her mansion. Her body was strong. Pilates and private gym sessions had kept it lean. But her spirit? Fragile. Bruised. "I feel like I'm dying," she whispered to no one. She turned away from the mirror and opened her wardrobe, not to pick a dress, but to push aside the clothes until she reached a hidden safe in the back wall. She tapped in a code. The door clicked. Inside were passports, foreign currency, gold coins, and a worn notebook. She pulled out the notebook, flipping past entries scribbled during sleepless nights. On the last page, she paused and traced a sentence written months ago in blue ink. "Would anyone love me if I had nothing to give?" She closed the book. That sentence haunted her. No one ever said, "Elena, are you okay?" Not without it being followed by, "Can you invest in my business?" Or, "Can I get a feature on your page?" Even her past lovers, all men who appeared powerful, eventually made her feel like a credit card with legs. So that day, with the sun slowly dipping into the Gulf of Guinea, Elena made a decision. She would vanish. Not forever. Just for a while. She would walk away from the mansion, the cars, the private chef who cooked dishes she no longer tasted, the stylists who dressed her in clothes she no longer enjoyed. She would strip herself down to nothing, to see the world not through tinted windows, but through dust and barefooted honesty, to find out if anyone anywhere could love her without knowing who she was. That night, she called off every meeting for the next 2 weeks. Her assistant, Kwabena, was stunned. "Should I notify the board, madam?" he asked. "No," she replied. "Tell them I'm going on a spiritual retreat. Somewhere remote." "Where exactly?" She paused. "Where nobody will follow. By midnight." The lights in the mansion were off. In her master bathroom, Elena sat at the edge of her tub, slowly undoing her wig. She peeled off her makeup with trembling fingers. She cut her acrylic nails with kitchen scissors. Then, from the back of her closet, she pulled out old clothes, faded jeans, a ripped t-shirt, flat slippers, and a scarf she hadn't worn since her university days. She looked at herself in the mirror again. The billionaire was gone. In her place stood a girl no one would recognize, a girl with plain eyes, cracked lips, and chipped polish on her fingers. She looked normal, but her heart beat wildly, like it had just been set free. At 3:00 a.m., Elena slipped out of the mansion through the service gate. The guards were asleep. No cameras followed her. No spotlight lit her way. She walked, past the sleeping streets of Airport Residential, past the sleeping villas of cantonments, past the road where her name once lit up a billboard. She kept walking until the streets began to look worn, the sidewalks uneven, the houses smaller. She reached Nima just as the azan call for Fajr prayer echoed across the quiet dawn. There, the real world was already waking up. Children carried buckets on their heads. Women swept the dusty roadside. Boys argued over who would get to use the single iron kettle first. Elena clutched her small nylon bag tighter. Inside, she had just 150 cedis, a toothbrush, and a bottle of sachet water. That was all. She wandered until her feet led her into a maze of shacks, wooden kiosks, and zinc-roofed homes. The smell of smoke and early morning wakey filled the air. She stood beside a blackened corner wall and watched people move. No one recognized her. No one greeted her, and for the first time in her life, that was exactly what she needed. But soon, hunger clawed at her stomach. She hadn't eaten since lunch the previous day. She approached a woman frying beaufort by the roadside. The heat from the oil stung her skin. "Please," she said, "can I work for some food?" The woman didn't even look at her. "This one? Go sleep a beg," she muttered, shooing her away like a fly. Elena's cheeks burned. She tried again with a group of boys peeling yams near a chop bar. "Please, I'll wash pans, anything." One of them glanced at her and smirked. "See this." "One. A shawo that lost her customer." They laughed. Tears stung her eyes. She turned and walked away. Her slippers slapped the ground loudly. Her pride shattered with each step. By midday, her legs were weak. The sun beat down like it had something to prove. Her scarf was soaked with sweat. Her hands trembled. She sat in the shadow of an abandoned kiosk, legs folded, heart aching. All around her, life went on. No one cared. No one saw her. Then, just as she was drifting into the blankness of heat and hunger, a shadow fell across her. She looked up, squinting. A young man stood there, holding a tray of ground nuts and water. "You look like you haven't eaten," he said. She didn't speak. He handed her a bag of peanuts and a sachet of water. No charge. "Why?" she whispered, voice barely a sound. He shrugged. "Because it looks like nobody else did." Then he turned and walked away. And Elena, for the first time in days, felt her heart soften. It was just a bag of peanuts. But to her, it felt like the first touch of real love. Dust on her feet. The next morning, Elena woke with the stiffness of someone who had never slept on concrete before. Her back ached. Her clothes stuck to her skin. Her head throbbed from a poor man's headache, dehydration, and fear. But what shocked her most wasn't the discomfort. It was how the world didn't pause to acknowledge her suffering. People passed by her like she was just another crack in the pavement. She sat beneath the tin awning of the abandoned kiosk, her arms wrapped around her knees, trying to ignore the ache in her belly. The peanuts from the boy yesterday were long gone. So was the sachet water. She still didn't know who he was, where he came from, or why he cared. But in a day full of curses and rejection, that tiny act of kindness had meant more than any award she'd ever won. She stood, brushed the dust from her trousers, and stepped back into the maze of shacks and stalls. This time, she didn't hope for kindness. She just wanted to survive. The roads in Nima were not made for heels or imported cars. They were made of red dust and broken stones, and today they burned under the morning sun. Elena's feet, once pampered in designer heels, were now cracked and sore in her thin slippers. She stopped by a small wooden stand where a woman sold oranges and bananas. "Please," she said softly, "may I peel some oranges for you? I can help for free. I just need something to eat." The woman didn't answer. She looked Elena up and down with suspicious eyes. Her face tightened. "You think I don't know your type? Ashawo with big grammar. Go find who sent you." Elena's lips trembled. She nodded and stepped away. The day wore on. Every attempt to help, to trade work for food, to find even the tiniest thread of human compassion, failed. The world didn't owe her kindness, and now she was learning just how cruel it could be when it believed you had nothing to offer. Around midday, the sun scorched the rooftops like fire. Elena found a patch of shade beneath a collapsing fence and sat with her back against the hot metal. Her mouth was dry. Her vision blurred slightly from heat and hunger. She dug into her bag and counted her remaining coins. 12 cedis. Barely enough. For a meal, if that. That's when she saw him again. The boy with the ground nut tray from yesterday. He was across the street now, laughing with a group of boys near a blue-painted wall that once had "No urinating here" scribbled on it in white chalk. His name, she would later learn, was Kojo. Kojo saw her sitting in the dirt and crossed the street, dodging Okadas and hawkers. His tray was almost empty today, just a few packets left. "You again," he said, crouching beside her. She smiled, weakly. "Still breathing," he grinned. "Barely." Kojo offered her another sachet of water, and this time Elena didn't ask why. She took it and drank like her life depended on it. When she finished, Kojo asked, "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Ellie," she lied. Kojo didn't pry. He sat beside her, pulling off his battered slippers to rub his sore feet. "You?" "No," he said after a moment. "You don't look like the girls around here." Elena froze. "Why?" "Your accent. Your posture. The way you talk. Most street girls talk rough. But you," he paused, "you talk like someone who had a soft life." Elena looked away. Not soft, just different. He didn't press further. Kojo was like that. Curious but kind. He didn't poke where he wasn't invited. He stood up, adjusted his tray, and said, "If you're hungry, Mama Efua sometimes gives leftover waki around 3 p.m. Come with me." Elena hesitated. "Will she give it to me?" "She won't bite you," Kojo said with a wink. So Elena followed him through a narrow path littered with bottle caps and broken sandals, past wooden stalls where children sold airtime cards, and women yelled out the names of their soups like auctioneers. They turned into a small open space where a plump woman stood over 3 steaming pots. Mama Efua. Her eyes were sharp. Her mouth moved constantly, scolding her apprentice and stirring the stew at the same time. Kojo approached first. "Mama, this, my sister Ellie. She dey hungry bad." Mama Efua didn't look convinced. "This your new girlfriend, Abi?" "No, Kojo laughed. "She be new for area. She no get anyone." Mama Efua grunted and turned her back. For a moment, Elena felt the rejection again. But then Mama Efua scooped some rice and beans into a small plastic bowl and slapped a piece of fried fish on top. "No. Come beg tomorrow," she barked, handing it to her. Elena nearly cried. "Thank you," she said, her voice hoarse. Kojo smiled and motioned for her to sit on a low bench beside the wall. They shared the food. Kojo barely ate. He kept passing more to her. "You need it more," he said simply. They didn't talk much after that. The silence between them was easy, real. That evening, Elena found a new spot to sleep, in the empty shell of a half-finished building behind, a closed salon. She laid her scarf on the ground, curled up against the concrete, and stared at the stars above. No chandelier tonight, just sky. But she felt something strange in her chest. Not sadness, not despair. It was the smallest flicker of something she hadn't felt in years, hope, and it came not from her mansion, or her millions, or her designer clothes. It came from dusty roads, shared meals, and a boy who asked nothing of her. That night, she wrote in her notebook with the tiny pen she kept hidden. "The dust on my feet today is not dirt, it's truth, and I think I needed it." The gift of nothing. By the third day, Elena's face had begun to change. It wasn't just the sun that darkened her cheeks, or the dirt that clung to her clothes. It was something deeper. Her expressions were slower, more grounded. Her eyes didn't dart nervously like they did when she first arrived. Now they observed, felt, absorbed. She had nothing, no makeup, no staff, no title, and yet something in her had started to breathe for the first time in years. She saw the world now, not from the tinted windows of a G-Wagon, but from the side of the road beside a peanut tray and rows of plastic chairs. And what she saw wasn't just poverty, it was perseverance. Mothers selling tomatoes with babies tied to their backs, boys polishing shoes in school uniforms 2 sizes too small, girls hawking sachet water by day and reading borrowed textbooks by torchlight at night. And in the middle of it all was Kojo. Kojo was a mystery. He showed up without being called, disappeared without saying goodbye. And yet, each time Elena needed help, he appeared, like the city itself whispered her pain to him. That morning, she sat outside Mama Ifua's food stand, peeling ginger roots as thanks for yesterday's meal. The sun was already hot, and her palms were sore from scrubbing pots, but she didn't complain. Kojo walked up behind her and dropped a sachet of water on her lap. "No need to faint today," he said, grinning. Elena looked up and smiled. "I might start charging you for every rescue." Kojo laughed. "Then I'll go broke fast." He dropped his tray beside her and sat cross-legged on the ground. "I want to show you something later," he said. "Come with me when you're done." By noon, they walked together down a long stretch of dusty road, past football fields made of sand and plastic goalposts. They crossed a shallow gutter by stepping on broken concrete slabs and reached a cluster of zinc houses. The roofs were patched with old banners and rice sacks. On the door of one house, a sticker read, "God is in control." "This is home," Kojo said simply. Elena blinked. The word home felt heavier now than it ever had. He pushed open the door, and a girl no older than 10 came running out barefoot, her cornrows tied with blue beads. "Kojo," she squealed, hugging him tight. "You brought a friend?" Kojo nodded. "Ronnie, this is Ellie," the girl beamed. "Are you his girlfriend?" Elena laughed. "Not yet, Ranny." Kojo's face turned red. Inside the house, there was only one room. A mattress on the floor, a plastic chair, a rusted ceiling fan that hadn't turned in months, a water bucket in the corner, and a small charcoal stove near the window. But the space felt warm, not because of comfort, but because of something else. Something Elena couldn't name yet. Kojo explained, "Ronnie's my sister. Our parents died 3 years ago. Malaria. Same week." Elena's breath caught. She looked at Ronnie, now sitting on the floor drawing shapes with chalk on the concrete. "I dropped out of school to take care of her," Kojo said, his voice low. "She doesn't know how hard it's been. I don't want her to." Elena sat on the floor beside the girl. "What do you want to be, Ronnie?" The girl thought for a moment. "A teacher, so I can help girls who never go to school." Tears prickled Elena's eyes. "I believe you'll do it," she whispered. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. Not because she missed her mansion, but because she couldn't stop thinking about Kojo and Ronnie. about how a boy with no money, no parents, and barely enough to eat had opened his home to a stranger and called it nothing. In her world, people gave gifts to be thanked publicly. They donated to gain attention, hosted charity galas with press releases, and posed beside oversized checks. But here, Kojo gave her something no one else ever had. His space, his truth, his trust. And he expected nothing in return. That to Elena was the greatest gift of all. The next morning, she rose early and swept the front of Mama Efua's stand before sunrise. She fetched water for the old widow down the lane. She helped a blind man cross the market road. No one told her to. She just did it. And slowly, people noticed. The insults turned into curious glances. The glances turned into greetings. Some vendors began calling her Ellie the Quiet One. One afternoon, Kojo found her crouched under a mango tree, braiding Ronnie's hair. "You're not like the others," he said quietly. She paused. "Because I don't speak loud?" "No," he said. "Because you don't ask for anything. But you give a lot." Elena looked away, afraid he might see the truth behind her eyes. "I had a life before this," she said, testing the waters. Kojo nodded. "Everyone has a past." "No," she said. "I mean a different life. I had more." "How much more?" he asked. She hesitated. "Everything." Kojo studied her for a long time, then said, "It's not what you had. It's what you do with what's left." Those words hit Elena like a prayer. That evening, she used her last 5 cedis to buy pencils and notebooks from a street seller. She gave them to Ronnie and 2 other girls who had been drawing in the dirt with sticks. When Ronnie asked, "Where did you get money from?" Elena just smiled. "I found it in kindness." Ronnie didn't understand, but she hugged her tightly. That night in her notebook, Elena wrote, "I used to think giving meant losing, but Kojo gave me nothing, and I feel richer than I ever did in my mansion." Whispers and rain. It began with a glance. Then 2. By the 4th day of her new life in Nima, the stares had started to change. Not the pitying kind she had received as a stranger, not even the dismissive ones she'd grown used to as just another homeless girl. No, these were sharper, curious, suspicious, as if people were beginning to realize there was something different about Ellie. Mama Efua, the loud but kind-hearted food vendor, had noticed it first. "This girl day too neat for street life," she mumbled one evening while folding plantain leaves. "And her English? E be Oxford style." Elena, who was washing dishes nearby, pretended not to hear, but others began to join in. "She no fit be beggar," said a woman selling boiled eggs. "I swear, I see him hold pen with left hand yesterday. That no rich people thing. I been watch her polish her shoe with water last night," added a teenage boy. "Even when she dey sleep under container, her back still straight like queen. It all." Didn't help that Elena had started attracting children too. Ronnie brought her along to the market every afternoon, bragging, "This is my big sister. She tells me stories and helps me read." Soon, more children came, some for help with homework, others just to sit beside her. Elena welcomed them. They reminded her of a part of herself she had locked away long ago, the girl who once believed she could change the world without needing to hide. But not everyone smiled. There was Adiza, the nosy woman who sold used clothes. Near the gutter, she watched Elena with hawk-like intensity. "Mark my words," she told her neighbor. "That girl no day normal. It get spirit behind her. Either she be runaway madam or she be spirit from shrine." And then came the rain. It arrived without warning, a heavy, angry downpour that drowned out the voices of traders and sent children scattering under roofs. The red dust turned to thick mud within minutes. Umbrellas flipped. The sky thundered like it was angry with the city. Elena was caught in the middle of the market, barefoot, trying to help Ronnie and two younger children across the flooded road when a sudden wave of water splashed from a passing taxi, soaking them all. The kids screamed. Elena held Ronnie tight, shielding her with her own scarf. That's when Adiza saw her, standing tall, soaked to the bone, helping others before herself. It wasn't just the posture. It wasn't just the clean way she tied her scarf despite the storm. It was something in her eyes. "Ellie!" someone shouted, tossing a broken umbrella. She caught it instinctively, with a grace that looked too practiced. "Did you see that?" Adiza said, pointing. "She moved like she'd a trained for camera. This no be ordinary street girl." Others started to murmur, drawn in by the drama, protected from the rain under market roofs. Kojo came running, feet splashing through water. "You okay?" he asked, looking at Ronnie, then at Elena. She nodded, but her hands were shaking. He placed his palm gently on her arm. "Come, let's go home." They walked through the storm in silence. Ronnie clung to Elena's side, and Kojo led the way. The rain softened by the time they reached his small zinc house, but the tension only thickened. Inside, Elena changed into dry clothes Kojo had laid out, a faded t-shirt and a pair of jogging trousers that hung awkwardly on her waist. She sat on the floor near the empty stove, rubbing her arms. Ronnie was already wrapped in a towel, dozing off. Kojo stood by the door, staring into the rain. "Ellie," he said suddenly. His tone was different. She looked up. "Yes?" "You never really told me anything about yourself." Elena's throat went dry. "You just showed up one day already speaking clean, reading like a teacher, helping like someone trained to lead," he continued. "Kojo, Wait," he raised a hand. "Please let me finish." He turned to face her. "I'm not angry. I'm just confused. You give without asking. You care too deeply. You walk with your head high even when sleeping on concrete. That's not street life. That's something else." Elena lowered her eyes. "Who are you, really?" The room fell into a silence so deep it drowned out the dripping tap in the corner. "I'm someone trying to find something real," she said softly. "That's not a name," Kojo replied. She looked at him, really looked at him. His eyes weren't accusing. They were searching, asking not for the details but for the truth. "I can't tell you everything." "Not yet," she whispered. He nodded slowly. "I won't force you. But if you want to stay in this house, if you want to be part of Ronnie's life, you have to give us more than silence." Elena's lips trembled. "I will. Soon, I promise." That night, long after Rani had fallen asleep, Kojo stepped outside and sat on the steps, listening to the last drops of rain tapping on the metal roof. Inside, Elena cried quietly into the corner of her scarf. Not because she was afraid of being exposed, but because for the first time in her life, a man hadn't demanded her wealth, her beauty, or her body. He had simply asked for the one thing she feared offering most, her truth. The truth in her tears. The rain had stopped, but its scent lingered like a ghost in the air, wet earth, rusted zinc, and something else, something heavier. It was the smell of truth waiting to be spoken. Elena didn't sleep that night. She lay, awake on the mattress, curled into herself, listening to the sound of Kojo's soft breath on the other side of the room. Ronnie was in between them, sleeping peacefully, her fingers loosely wrapped around Elena's own. The girl had grown attached in just days, called her big sister, insisted she be the one to braid her hair and listen to her school dreams. Elena had laughed with her, cried quietly behind her, and promised her a world she wasn't sure she deserved to offer. But now the lie that kept them close was cracking. Kojo was right. She had come with too much polish, too much poise. Her quietness, her discipline, her patience, things she'd learned from years of business meetings and luxury retreats, had betrayed her. And even now, even though he hadn't yelled or accused, His voice echoed in her head. That's not a name. As dawn broke, Elena sat up quietly and walked barefoot to the door. The air outside was cold. The sky was still gray, unsure of what the day would become. She sat on the front step and watched as the world around her began to wake. Roosters crowed in the distance. A woman swept her compound across the street with a worn broom. Somewhere, a radio crackled to life with gospel music. Elena hugged her knees, pressing her face against them. That's how Kojo found her an hour later. He had stepped outside in silence, carrying a cup of hot water and a loaf of bread wrapped in newspaper. He sat beside her without speaking, placing the cup between them. Elena didn't look up. I didn't sleep, she whispered. I know, Kojo replied. A long pause followed, the kind that either heals or breaks everything. I lied to you, she said finally. To Ronnie, to this whole place. Kojo didn't react. He simply waited. I didn't come here because I was homeless. I came because I wanted to be, for a little while. Now he turned to look at her, confusion etched on his face. I'm not who you think I am, she continued, her voice shaking. My real name is Elena Aguiman. I'm from Airport Residential. I live in a mansion the size of this entire block. I built a company when I was 22. I was on magazine covers. I've been to New York, London, Tokyo. I've sat across presidents. I've been called Queen of Ghana Tech. Kojo blinked, stunned, silent. I walked away from it all. Because none of it meant anything anymore, she continued. Every man I met wanted to be seen with me. Not really see me. Every friend wanted access. No one ever asked me how I felt unless they followed it with a favor. Her throat closed up, but she forced the words out. I came here to see if anyone could love me without knowing my name, without cameras, without filters, without a single CD to my name. Kojo stared straight ahead, not speaking. And then you showed up, she said, tears now falling freely. You gave me water, food, kindness, a place to sit when everyone else pushed me away. You didn't ask what I had. You just gave. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a crumpled note. Her old Forbes magazine cover, folded and hidden for days. She placed it on his lap. This is me, she whispered. Kojo looked down at the picture. Her hair was sleek, her dress crisp white, her face confident, commanding. But the woman beside him now looked nothing like that photo, and yet, somehow, more real. The silence grew heavy. Then finally, Kojo stood up slowly. I don't know what to say, he murmured. This whole time you were... Her? She nodded. And yet you swept. Floors, shared leftover wakie, carried water from a broken pipe. I wanted to earn something no one could hand me, she said. A connection that was real. Kojo turned away, running his hands through his hair. I don't even know how to feel. Part of me wants to be angry. You lied. You tricked us. No. But then I remember. He turned back to her, eyes burning. You held Ronnie when she was sick. You gave her books. You let her call you sister, and not once did you look down on us. His voice cracked. Not even when you had every reason to. Elena swallowed her sobs. I didn't plan to fall in love here, she whispered. But I did. With the way you carry pain and still smile. With the way Ronnie dreams like the world hasn't broken her yet. With the way this place, broken as it is, holds more humanity than my mansion ever did. Kojo stepped closer. He knelt before her. Elena, he said slowly. Not Ellie. She nodded. You didn't have to lie to be loved. Not by me. Not by her. She looked up, hope flickering through tears. I need time, Kojo said softly. Not because I doubt your heart, but because I have to protect mine. She reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. I'll wait, she whispered, however long it takes. Inside, Ronnie peeked through the curtain. She didn't understand the full weight of what had just happened. But she saw her brother's eyes, and Elena's tears. She smiled gently, because even if the truth had come late, it had finally come. The woman who returned rumors moved faster than taxis in Accra traffic. By morning, Elena's secret had already crossed the market twice and doubled back with extras. Whispers buzzed from one corner to another like mosquitoes at dusk. Her name. Ellie had morphed into something dangerous. Elena, the woman from the magazines, the girl in the suit, the billionaire in disguise. It started with Adiza, of course. She was the first to notice the photo Kojo had folded into his back pocket the night before. "You think I blind?" she said, slamming her market stall with her palm. "That picture be her. The same eyes, same nose. It's that tech woman, the one they call Queen of Mobile Money." She lied to all of us. By mid-morning, a cluster of vendors had gathered around the rusty newspaper board at the end of the market lane. Pinned among old lottery numbers and funeral announcements was a laminated copy of a 3-month-old edition of Forbes Africa taped neatly behind glass. There, in sharp white and gold, was Elena Aguiman, smiling confident. Nothing like the quiet girl who once swept Mama Ifua's stand and handed out pencils to schoolchildren. People gasped. Some cursed, some laughed. Others simply stood in silence, trying to make sense of the betrayal. "She been sleeping behind my store," someone shouted. "She wore the same clothes 3 days straight. Chele, so all the time she dey suffer with us, she fit by the whole street." By noon, even the children were asking questions. Is Auntie Ellie a princess? Was she pretending to be poor because she wanted to punish us? The questions stung harder than the facts. And through it all, Kojo said nothing. He stayed inside, his tiny zinc house sitting on the floor beside a pot of cooling stew, staring at the wall while Ronnie flipped through the picture of Elena again and again. "Is she still coming back?" Ronnie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kojo didn't answer, because he didn't know. And then, just when the gossip had reached its sharpest edge, just when the people were about to turn Elena into a fable of betrayal, she returned. Not quietly, not in disguise, but as herself. It was just after 3 p.m. when a matte black SUV rolled through the edge of the market, followed by another and another. Children ran after it, shouting. Market women paused mid-sale. Even the old men, playing drafts under the almond tree, stood up. The door opened, and there she was, Elena Aguiman, the woman they had laughed with, cried beside, insulted, and fed. No makeup, no security, no sunglasses, just a plain cream dress and her natural hair wrapped in a scarf. But this time, everyone recognized her. She walked straight down the alley, past Mama Ifua's food stand, past Adiza's table of old jeans, past the children staring with wide eyes, and every step she took was quiet, heavy, brave. She didn't hide. She didn't run. She stood on a wooden bench in the center of the market and raised her hand. And the market, for the first time in years, went silent. "I came here to find out. If love could exist without money," she said, voice firm but raw. "If kindness could survive without cameras. I didn't mean to lie. I meant to listen." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "I didn't want to deceive you. I wanted to disappear. To be seen without being measured. I wanted to know what it was like to need something and not be able to buy it." People shifted. Some looked away. Some stared straight at her, searching her face for falsehood. "I saw how you treated the poor," she continued. "I saw cruelty. Yes, I saw pride. But I also saw people like Kojo, people who gave when they had little, people who offered food, shelter, kindness, without asking for my name, my fame, or my bank balance." Kojo stepped out from the crowd then, his face unreadable. Ronnie stood beside him, clutching his hand. Elena looked at him, her voice trembling now. And in this place, in the dust and noise, I found something I've never found in any boardroom. Any luxury suite or any Forbes list, I found truth. And I found love. The silence broke like thunder. Mama Afua stepped forward. I cursed you once, she said, her voice cracking. But I also fed you. You did, Elena replied gently, and I will never forget that. Adiza scoffed loudly, arms crossed. So what now? You'll go back to your palace and leave us behind again? Elena stepped down from the bench and walked to her. No, she said quietly. I'm building something here. For the children who study in silence. For the girls who dream of classrooms. For the boys pushing wheelbarrows with hearts full of gold. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small folder. Starting today, I've set up a fund, a scholarship for every child in this market whose family can't afford school. I'm opening a mobile clinic here every month and a job program to help every trader who wants to grow their stall. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Ronnie burst into tears. Kojo still hadn't moved. Elena stepped toward him. You taught me what real love is, she said. You saw me when I was invisible. You respected me before you knew my name. She turned to Ronnie, knelt before her, and whispered, I'm still your Auntie Ellie if you'll have me. The little girl threw herself into her arms, and finally, Kojo spoke. I never wanted your money. I know, she replied. I just wanted your honesty. She looked up at him, eyes filled with everything she could never say. And now, you have it all. Kojo knelt beside them. The three of them sat in the center of the market, man, woman, child, and the city buzzed around them like bees around a quiet flame. And for the first time, Elena didn't feel like she had returned. She felt like she had arrived. No roof, no throne, just love. Elena Aguiman had once lived in a mansion so large it echoed when she walked alone through it. She had bathtubs carved from Italian marble, closet doors taller than some people's homes, and more shoes than she could wear in a year. But on this particular morning, as she sat cross-legged on the dirt floor of Kojo's zinc house with Ronnie in her lap, and the smell of boiling porridge rising from the charcoal stove, she realized something she had never truly lived until now. It had been 5 days since she revealed the truth. 5 days since her name was spoken openly in Nima without fear or confusion. Some still called her Madame Elena. Others still whispered behind her back. But most had simply returned to life, a gesture far more powerful than applause. They had accepted her presence not because of what she gave, but because of what she stayed to become. Kojo, still as steady as ever, hadn't changed overnight. He was slower to smile now, not because he didn't care, but because he cared. Deeper. He watched everything, measured everything. Not with suspicion, but with the weary wisdom of someone who'd been hurt before. But Elena didn't mind. She knew healing didn't wear a timeline, and Ronnie, she blossomed. With new notebooks, clean uniforms, and the promise of school waiting for her, the girl's laughter came quicker now. She asked 1,000 questions. A day called Elena sister mother with a giggle and told everyone she met that her auntie had a magic house with lights that talk. That Sunday they went together to the mansion, not in secrecy, not in disguise, but as a family. The black SUV arrived at the iron gates of Elena's Banana Island estate. And for the first time, Kojo stepped into her world. The guards recognized her instantly and bowed, but Elena didn't stop to soak in the power. She only held Ronnie's hand and said, "This is still just a house, nothing more." Inside, Kojo looked at the gold-framed art, the echoing hallways, the cold floors, and said almost softly, "You really lived here all by yourself?" "For years," she answered. "Must have been loud," he murmured. She turned to him. Not loud. Empty. Later that night, Elena brought them to the garden, a lush, green paradise at the back of her mansion, with mango trees, a small fountain, and stone benches she had never sat on before. Ronnie ran barefoot across the grass, chasing butterflies. Kojo leaned on the edge of the fountain, watching quietly. "I don't want to just bring you into my life," Elena said, sitting beside him. "I want to rebuild it with you. With her, not as guests, as family." He looked at her, eyes searching hers. "Even if I have nothing?" "You gave me everything," she replied, "before I had the courage to tell you my name." He nodded, slow and full of meaning. "I want to marry you," she whispered, her voice trembling. Kojo froze. "You... what?" She smiled. "Not because I owe you. Not because I want to rescue anyone. I want to build something real, with a man who fed me when I had only dust on my feet." Kojo blinked. He reached into his pocket, pulled out something tiny, something Elena wasn't expecting. Silver wire, twisted into a makeshift ring. "I was going to wait until I could afford better," he said, voice rough, "but I realized. There's nothing more honest than this." He went to one knee, clumsily, almost shy. "Elena Aguiman," he said, using her full name for the first time. "Will you marry me? Not as a queen, but as a woman who knows how to be poor and how to love." Elena's breath caught. She took the ring in trembling hands, tears flooding her eyes. "I'd wear this over diamonds," she whispered. "Yes, 1,000,000 times, yes." Ronnie shrieked with joy. "You're getting married? I'll wear blue." They laughed, all three of them, until the stars blinked awake in the sky, and a week later, beneath a mango tree in Nima, surrounded by traders, children, and every soul who had once judged, mocked, or helped her, Elena married Kojo. There were no limousines, no international press, no designer gown. She wore a simple kente dress sewn by a local seamstress. Kojo wore white. Ronnie scattered flower petals she had picked herself from the roadside. The entire market clapped as they kissed. It wasn't a royal wedding. It was something far more sacred. Later that night, Elena sat by the open window of her mansion, no longer alone. Kojo was making tea in the kitchen. Ronnie was asleep beside her teddy bear. The air was quiet, but her heart was full. She opened her old notebook, the same one she once carried with her while living on the streets. On the last page, beneath, her oldest question, "Would anyone love me if I had nothing to give?" She wrote, "Yes, and now I have everything." Moral of the story. In a world where people chase status, wealth, and recognition, love remains the only treasure that can't be bought. Elena's journey teaches us that the truest wealth lies in connection, in being seen, heard, and valued, for who we are, not for what we own. Kojo gave her nothing, and yet gave her everything. She gave up everything, only to find what she truly needed. In the end, it wasn't about the mansion. It was about the people inside it.